Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to effortlessly create deep connections while others struggle despite their best efforts? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about perfectly crafted pickup lines or rehearsed routines. What truly creates attraction operates on a far deeper level, one that bypasses conscious thought entirely and speaks directly to human emotion and instinct. There's a reason why someone can be in a perfectly stable situation, comfortable, secure, content, and yet feel an unexpected pull towards someone new. It's not a rational decision. It's not something they plan or choose. It happens at the level of pure emotion, at the level of chemistry that doesn't consult logic or appropriateness. These responses are hardwired into us, running on ancient programming that predates civilization itself. Today, I'm going to share 5 communication principles with you. These aren't manipulative tricks or gimmicks. They're authentic ways of interacting that trigger genuine emotional responses. And the final one might completely shift how you think about human connection. But first, let's address something crucial. How often have you found yourself in a situation where you're trying really hard to make a good impression, only to watch the other person's interest fade? Or perhaps you've held back completely, paralyzed by the fear of saying the wrong thing and ended up invisible? Maybe you've experienced both, oscillating between these extremes, never quite finding the right balance. Here's what happens to most people. They swing wildly between these two modes. Either they overcommunicate, desperately trying to prove their worth through endless conversation, flooding the interaction with words and energy, or they shut down completely, allowing insecurity to silence them, becoming a passive observer in their own social life. The truth is, genuine connection doesn't emerge from either extreme. It comes from something entirely different, from the authenticity of your presence, from your ability to truly hear what someone is saying, from understanding the subtle emotional currents that flow beneath every interaction, and from the confidence to exist fully without seeking constant validation. Think about the people in your life who you find most compelling. Chances are, they're not the ones who talk the most or try the hardest. They're the ones who seem comfortable in their own skin. They're present. They listen. They respond authentically rather than strategically. There's a quality to their energy that draws you in without effort. If you're finding value in this exploration, I'd appreciate you engaging with this content by liking and subscribing. It helps build a community of people committed to genuine self-development and authentic connection. This kind of content thrives when people who resonate with it help amplify it. Now let's dive into these 5 principles. Each one operates on a different psychological mechanism, and together they form a complete approach to creating genuine attraction and connection. Principle 1. I'm not looking to convince you of anything. I just want to understand where you're coming from. This statement dismantles one of the most common emotional barriers people carry, the expectation that others always have an agenda. We live in a world where everyone seems to want something from us. Sales, persuasion, influence, it's everywhere. And so we develop defenses, we put up walls, we approach new interactions with a degree of suspicion. When you express this principle with genuine calm, without any underlying neediness or anxiety, something fundamental shifts in the dynamic. It's like watching ice melt. The defensive walls come down, physical tension releases, the guarded posture softens. You're signaling something profound, that you don't require their agreement or validation. You're not engaged in some power struggle. You're simply present with them. Here's the distinction most people miss. The average person listens with the intent to respond. They're already formulating their next point while the other person is still speaking. They're waiting for their turn to talk, to share their opinion, to demonstrate their knowledge or wit. It's not really listening at all. It's just waiting. But when you listen with the genuine intent to understand, without any pressure or hidden motive, you create psychological space for authentic connection to develop organically. You become one of the rare people who actually sees them, hears them, acknowledges their perspective without immediately trying to change it or one-up it. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Imagine you're having a conversation and the other person shares a viewpoint you disagree with. The typical response is to immediately counter it, to explain why they're wrong, to present your superior perspective. But what if instead you said, "That's interesting. I see it differently, but I'm curious what led you to that conclusion." Help me understand your perspective. Notice what happens in that moment. Instead of creating opposition, you've created curiosity. Instead of triggering defensiveness, you've invited elaboration. The conversation deepens rather than becoming adversarial. And in that depth, real connection becomes possible. This doesn't mean you abandon your own viewpoints or become a passive, agreeable person. It means you're secure enough in your own perspective that you don't need to force it on others. That security itself is incredibly attractive. Principle 2, there's something about your perspective I find compelling. That's not what I expected. This approach transcends surface-level interaction. It connects with something far more meaningful, a person's intellectual and emotional identity. You're not commenting on superficial qualities, you're acknowledging the way they think, the uniqueness of their viewpoint. Here's why this matters so much. We live in a world obsessed with appearances. People constantly comment on how others look, what they're wearing, their physical attributes, and while compliments can feel nice momentarily, they rarely create lasting impression because they're so common, so expected, so shallow. But when someone acknowledges your mind, your perspective, your unique way of seeing the world, that touches something deeper. It says, I see beyond your surface. I recognize your internal world. I value the distinct way you process reality. And when you add that element of genuine surprise, that's not what I expected, you activate a powerful psychological response. The person feels seen as distinct, as original, as someone who defies easy categorization. In a world where everyone feels reduced to demographics and stereotypes, this recognition of uniqueness is profoundly impactful. This recognition sparks immediate intrigue. They begin wondering what about their expression captured your attention. They start reflecting on the interaction in a deeper way. They replay the conversation in their mind, considering what made them stand out to you. This creates lasting impression because most communication remains disappointingly shallow and predictable. Let me share why this is so rare. Most people are so focused on how they're being perceived that they barely notice the other person at all. They're monitoring their own performance, worrying about whether they're being interesting or attractive or impressive. They're not actually present with the other person. They're trapped in their own self-consciousness. When you genuinely pay attention to someone's perspective and acknowledge what makes it unique, you demonstrate that you've transcended that self-focused state. You're actually there with them, noticing them, appreciating what makes them different. And that level of presence is magnetic. Here's a key nuance. This only works if it's genuine. You can't fake intellectual appreciation. If you're not actually interested in how someone thinks, they'll sense the hollowness of the compliment. But when you cultivate genuine curiosity about people's perspectives, when you train yourself to notice what makes each person's viewpoint unique, this becomes natural and authentic. Principle 3, I'm not here to perform for you. I'm genuinely curious about who you are. With this statement, you completely invert the typical social script. While most people are scrambling for approval and attention, you position yourself differently. You become someone who values authentic connection over validation seeking. Think about typical social interactions. There's often an unspoken competition happening. People are trying to be the most interesting person in the room, the funniest, the most impressive. They're performing, showcasing, competing for attention and approval. It's exhausting for everyone involved. This fundamentally alters the emotional equation. You're not competing in the attention economy. You're evaluating whether a genuine connection exists. You're approaching the interaction from a place of abundance rather than scarcity, not desperate for approval, but curious about compatibility. This shift creates a fascinating dynamic. The other person often begins trying to demonstrate their value to you. It's a natural psychological response. When someone isn't chasing us, when they seem genuinely self-sufficient and simply curious, we often find ourselves wanting to engage them, to spark their interest, to prove we're worth knowing. Psychologists call this the reversal of validation seeking, and it's remarkably effective. But here's what's crucial: this can't be a tactic or technique. If you're strategically pretending not to care while secretly desperate for approval, people sense it. The incongruence between your words and your energy creates discomfort and distrust. When you communicate this with genuine tranquility, with relaxed body language, steady breathing, and no hint of performative behavior, you signal centered self-possession. And that quality is magnetically attractive across all forms of human relationship, not just romantic ones. Think about it from a practical standpoint. When you meet someone new, what's more appealing? Someone who's clearly trying very hard to impress you, or someone who seems comfortable with themselves and genuinely interested in discovering who you are? The answer is obvious. This principle requires real inner work. It means developing a strong enough sense of self that you don't need external validation to feel okay. It means cultivating genuine curiosity about others. It means being comfortable with the possibility that not every connection will work out, and being okay with that. When you embody this authentically, something remarkable happens. People feel it. They relax around you. They open up. They show you their real selves instead of their performed selves. And that's where genuine connection lives. This taps into one of the most potent principles in behavioral psychology, the combination of safety with intrigue. When these elements coexist, they create conditions for deep, meaningful connection. Safety alone isn't enough. It can become boring, predictable, lacking in energy. Intrigue alone isn't enough. It can become exhausting, unstable, anxiety-producing. But when you create an environment where someone feels both safe to be themselves and intrigued by your presence, that's when powerful connections form. Think about the relationships in your life that matter most. Chances are they're the ones where you feel you can be fully yourself, where you don't have to edit or perform or pretend, where you can share your thoughts, your fears, your quirks, your contradictions, and feel accepted rather than judged. When you offer that to someone else, you're offering something incredibly rare and valuable. You're creating the conditions for them to drop their mask, to stop performing, to show up as they actually are. And in that authentic space, real intimacy becomes possible. Here's a crucial distinction. Offering this freedom doesn't mean you have no standards or boundaries. It doesn't mean you accept any and all behavior. It means you're not trying to mold someone into your ideal version of them. You're interested in who they actually are, not who you think they should be. This requires a particular kind of confidence, the confidence to handle reality rather than needing people to be certain ways to make you comfortable. When someone feels you can handle their authentic self, they relax. And in that relaxation, they become more fully themselves, which paradoxically often brings out their most attractive qualities. Principle 5. I understand the value of walking away while the experience is still meaningful. This is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated principle of all, because it engages with humanity's oldest emotional trigger, the fear of losing something valuable. You're communicating emotional maturity, the capacity for healthy boundaries, and an understanding that not every interaction should be prolonged indefinitely. Let me explain the psychology behind this. Our brains are wired to pursue what moves away from us and to devalue what's always available. It's called the scarcity principle, and it governs everything from economics to relationships. When something is abundant and constantly available, we take it for granted. When something is limited or might disappear, we suddenly recognize its value. This creates what psychologists call productive tension, a state of heightened engagement. The human brain enters a state of anticipation. The person continues thinking about the interaction long after it's concluded. This is the dopamine system functioning at optimal levels, creating memory, desire, and continued interest. But here's what most people misunderstand about this principle. It's not about playing games or manipulating scarcity. It's about genuine self-respect and understanding that quality matters more than quantity in human interaction. Think about conversations you've had that went on too long. What happens? The energy dissipates. You start repeating yourself. The magic fades. The connection that felt so alive begins to feel forced or exhausting. By the end, you're both glad it's over, and the lingering feeling is often one of depletion rather than excitement. Now contrast that with interactions that ended while they were still energizing, where both people wanted to continue but recognized it was time to part. The feeling that remains is entirely different: anticipation, curiosity, desire to reconnect. The interaction lives on in memory as purely positive, untarnished by the fatigue of overextension. This principle communicates several things simultaneously. First, that you value your own time and energy enough to protect them. Second, that you're not desperate for connection. You can walk away from good things, which implies you have other good things in your life. Third, that you understand timing and can read social dynamics well enough to know when an interaction has reached its natural peak. All of these qualities signal high social intelligence and emotional security, and those qualities are universally attractive. Here's the practical application. When you're having a great conversation and you feel the temptation to prolong it indefinitely, resist that temptation. Instead, acknowledge the quality of the connection and suggest continuing it another time. This has been really enjoyable. I need to go, but I'd love to continue this conversation. Are you free this weekend? Notice what happens. You've acknowledged the value of the interaction. You've demonstrated that you have other commitments and boundaries. You've created anticipation for future connection. And you've left them wanting more rather than feeling drained. This is radically different from artificially cutting things short to create false scarcity, which people can usually sense and which feels manipulative. This is about genuinely honoring both the connection and your own boundaries, which creates authentic scarcity based on real-life constraints and self-respect. The crucial understanding. Most people miss. Now, here's the essential truth that transforms everything. These principles completely fail if you attempt to deploy them as manipulation tactics. They only create genuine impact when they reflect your actual values and authentic way of being. People don't respond to words in isolation. They respond to the complete package of emotional signals that accompany those words. Vocal tone, eye contact, breathing patterns, physical posture, all of these communicate far more than any single phrase ever could. Let me break this down more specifically. When you speak, people are unconsciously processing dozens of signals simultaneously. Is your voice steady or shaky? Does it project confidence or betray anxiety? Are you making appropriate eye contact or avoiding it? Is your breathing calm and deep or shallow and rapid? Is your posture open and relaxed or closed and tense? All of these nonverbal signals either reinforce or contradict your words. When there's alignment, when your words, tone, body language, and energy all communicate the same thing, people find you credible, trustworthy, compelling. When there's misalignment, when you're saying confident things while displaying anxious body language, people feel confused and often distrustful. If anxiety pervades your energy, it will be felt. If desperation for approval colors your interaction, it will be noticed. Conversely, when you embody genuine centeredness and self-possession, the response is entirely different. This is why I emphasize this point repeatedly. Communication creates impact when it emerges from authentic identity, not when it's used as a scripted technique. You can't fake your way to genuine connection. You can temporarily fool some people with well-delivered lines, but it's not sustainable and it doesn't create the kind of deep connection most of us actually want. What works is becoming the kind of person who naturally thinks and communicates in these ways. And here's the good news, that's entirely possible. These aren't innate qualities some people have and others don't. They're skills and mindsets that can be developed through practice and self-work. How do you develop them? By working on yourself. By building genuine confidence through accomplishment and self-acceptance. By cultivating real curiosity about other people. By developing emotional regulation skills so you're not at the mercy of your anxieties. By establishing a life you're genuinely excited about so you're not desperately seeking validation from others. When you do this inner work, these principles stop being techniques you deploy and start being natural expressions of who you are. And that's when they become truly powerful. If this content is shifting your perspective, I encourage you to subscribe for more insights into authentic personal development and genuine human connection. And if you're ready to deepen your understanding of authentic presence and meaningful relationships, explore the additional resources available in the description. There, I detail practical approaches to developing this magnetic quality in everyday life, not through pretense or performance, but through genuine personal development. Because here's the reality, true confidence isn't about appearing certain. It's about being grounded in who you actually are. The deeper pattern behind all 5 principles. Before we close, I want to highlight the pattern that runs through all 5 of these principles. Each one, in its own way, communicates self-sufficiency and abundance rather than neediness and scarcity. The first principle, seeking to understand rather than convince, shows you don't need to change someone's mind to feel secure in your own perspective. The second principle, acknowledging unique perspective rather than appearance, shows you value depth over superficiality and notice what others miss. The third principle, curiosity over performance, shows you're not desperate for approval, but genuinely interested in connection. The fourth principle, permission to be authentic, shows you can handle reality and don't need people to perform for you. The fifth principle, knowing when to walk away, shows you value quality over quantity and respect your own boundaries. See the pattern? Every single one communicates that you're operating from a place of internal abundance rather than external need. And abundance is attractive. Scarcity repels. When you need something from someone, their approval, their validation, their attention, they feel it, and it creates pressure, discomfort, a desire to escape. But when you're genuinely self-sufficient and simply interested in genuine connection, people feel drawn to your energy. This doesn't mean you don't desire connection. It means you desire connection from a place of choice rather than need. There's a profound difference between "I need you to validate me" and "I'd enjoy getting to know you." One creates pressure and resistance. The other creates openness and possibility. Your next steps. I'm curious. Which of these 5 principles resonated most powerfully with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them and often respond, and these conversations help me understand what content serves this community best. And remember this fundamental truth that many people resist acknowledging. Attraction doesn't begin with physical contact or clever words. It begins in emotional states and authentic presence. When you master your own internal landscape, when you cultivate genuine self-possession, the right communication naturally emerges. Connection appears without force or manipulation. That represents the actual secret. Not techniques, not scripts, not performance, just authentic presence meeting authentic presence. That's where real connection lives. That's where genuine attraction grows. That's where meaningful relationships begin. The journey to developing this kind of authentic presence isn't always easy. It requires honest self-examination. It requires facing your insecurities rather than hiding behind performances. It requires building real confidence through real growth rather than faking it. But it's worth it, because the alternative, spending your life performing, seeking validation, never quite feeling seen or known, that's far more difficult in the long run. When you commit to becoming genuinely confident, genuinely curious, genuinely centered, everything changes. Not just your romantic relationships, but all your relationships. Not just how others perceive you, but how you perceive yourself. That's the journey I'm inviting you on. Not a quick fix or a collection of tricks, but real transformation. The kind that lasts. The kind that creates the life and connections you actually want. If that resonates with you, stay connected with this content. Subscribe, engage, let me know what's helping you. We're building something here, a community of people committed to authentic growth and genuine connection in a world that often values neither. Thank you for your time and attention. Now go out there and practice these principles, not as techniques, but as expressions of who you're becoming. The world needs more authentic people. Be one of them.